All right, ladies and gentlemen, we are back with another episode of Canada Hoops. Thank you for your continued support. Please keep downloading and sharing us. Tell a friend to tell a friend. Our guest today is a crucial person in Canada basketball. She is the general manager and executive vice president of the Women's High Performance Program and Department, which includes the senior women's national team and all national next gen programming, and has been with Canada basketball since 1998 when there was only 4 employees at the program. She is Denise Dignard. Denise, thank you so much for joining us on Canada Hoops.
Thanks so much, Matt, for having me and for all the fabulous work that you do with the program and everybody that you've interviewed and that you're going to interview because we've got a beautiful sport. We all have this passion for this amazing sport. And the more people know about it and the more people have a positive and safe experience with our sport, the more it'll continue to grow and get corporate Canada on board with regards to the support that's so needed in amateur sport in this country.
Yeah, no, thank you, and well said. And yeah, it's a beautiful game, and it's been an amazing experience to connect with everyone and share the love for the game. Obviously, both on the women's and men's side, and we appreciate you taking the time. I know it's a busy time for you as the senior women's team gets ready to compete overseas in Hungary for the Olympic qualifiers. Just let our listeners and your friends and the Canada basketball community know how you're doing, Denise, in this busy time, and just what's really ahead for you right now.
Well, we actually leave today for our Olympic qualifying tournament in Chopin, Hungary. And so we're going to go and train in Vienna, and then until the 5th, and then the 6th to the 11th, we'll be in Chopin, Hungary for that Olympic qualifying tournament where we'll be facing Hungary on February 8th. February 9th, we'll have Spain, and February 11th, we'll have Japan. And the top 3 of 4 qualified to the Paris Olympics.
Right, and I know the community is excited and looking forward to watching the tournament. We can catch all the games on Sportsnet, obviously, and I know our roster hasn't really been released. I know I've kind of connected with a few of the players, and they've confirmed whether they're going. I won't say anything yet, but is it safe to say it's kind of a veteran group, Denise, that's going over there to play in Hungary and look to obviously qualify the women's national team for Paris? Is it definitely an experienced group that's going there?
Yeah, we've got athletes that are part of our core that have, extensive experience with our national team program. And, given that it's a FIBA window, our pros are available for us. There's no conflict with the WNBA. So we've got a good core and some young ones as well. So always a good mix, and seems our rosters are always made up of that nice mix of veterans and up and coming athletes.
Yeah, that's what I'm sure we'll get into that a little bit later. Just that's been an exciting part of, I think, the senior women's team is that mix of the vets and the youth, and getting the next generation ready. I know. Let's I'll be a fan for a moment, and I'll just say, look, the team's going to qualify and be ready to schedule things for Paris. Have you looked that far ahead in terms of friendlies and exhibitions and into the summer? Is that kind of on the table right now for you and Mike Bartlett? Like, is that obviously something you need to be aware of, or are you trying to not look too far past Hungary?
No, actually, a big part of my job is always looking ahead and having plans. You have to
Right.
plan, and as the Olympic Committee always reminds us as high performance directors or GMs, is you never leaving stone unturned. And so the detail behind the plans, plan A, plan B, and we learned about that in during the pandemic, leading into Tokyo and being postponed, and there was pivoting and many plans. So yes, there are plans in place for exhibition. You have to do that early to just secure them.
Right.
So for us, it would be, certainly doing some training here in Canada and getting some exhibition and another training phase out west, and then going to Europe pretty early, getting 2 different tournaments over there in Belgium and in Spain, and then coming into Lille, which is the site of the preliminary round for men's and women's basketball. So yeah, plans are rolling.
We love it. We love it. I know in conversations with Mike and others, there's a little bit of a hint at things around camp in Toronto, and for both the men's and women's sides, which is kind of, I think, will be a cool celebration and collaboration, if you will. So I think the community is excited about that. Denise, I know you had a great playing career yourself as a player, involved in the game throughout your whole life. Maybe just tell us, how the game took shape for you, how you became a basketball player, and just extended that on to now this big time role with the program.
All right. Well, I come from Quebec, a northern, small, remote 7,000 population called Port Cartier, and my first language is French. I'm from Acadian roots. My parents were
Cool.
both from New Brunswick, and they moved to Port Cartier and have 8 kids, and so I was the 5th kid born and first one born in Port Cartier, and it was there was a I guess the reason we moved up there was because there was an American company that mining company, and my dad was an engineer, so built the railway to the mines up there, and it's located right on the Gulf of St. Lawrence, and so
Wow.
it's like having the Atlantic Ocean and the St. Lawrence River all in one, and so small town, but we ended up having an English school and a French school, so we all went to primary school in French, and then we went to English school, and English school had sports. And so my brothers and sisters older than me were we played all sports. And so they had basketball there. And I was like, I can't wait to get to that school, because then for sure we're going to be able to do all sports. So we played, soccer, track, volleyball, basketball. And so for me, my brothers and sisters that were older kind of inspired me initially to get into the game, and got pretty good at it. But it was probably so I started maybe at the age of 13, and we only go to grade 11 in Quebec, and then you go to CEGEP. And
Right.
so for me in grade 10, summer of grade 10, we had done this, I don't know, shoot-a-thon to raise funds, and myself and 2 buddies that I used to train with got an opportunity to go to register for the Richie Spears basketball camp in Lennoxville. And this is like a 14-hour drive. But the year is 1976,
Okay.
the first year of the women's basketball in the Olympics in Montreal. And who's at that basketball camp as camp counselors are female Olympians in Liz Silcott, Sylvia Sweeney, Colleen Dufresne, and we get a camp photo at the end of the camp, and they sign my picture, the back of my picture, saying, "See you on the national team one day."
Cool.
And so then I had a dream. You talk about how much of an impact players can have for the next generation. Well, that happened to me. Then I was like, okay, super. I get back home, and my mom was single mom by that time. And so I'm like just really focused on, earning whatever money I could babysitting and getting to this camp. And then I'm really focused. So for the next year, I'm like in the gym at 7 a.m. before school, just doing it. And then chose to go to CEGEP in Montreal. So 12 hours from my hometown. Why? Because they had better basketball in the English schools. And so played at John Abbott there for 2 years, and then chose university to stay in Canada, because at Bishop's, the university that I chose, we had national team players there. And I
Okay.
knew every day I was going to get better, So that was great to spend my 3 years there. And I ended up while I was in CJEP, I made the junior national team. And so that was a big eye opener. But every time, like I'd go to camp or whatever, I'd just realize, whoa, these are the things I need to work on. And trained against guys, really played
Okay.
against guys, and so then from junior national team went on to senior national team and was part of the first group to win a bronze medal at the World Cup in '79. And so from there, though, I got to see the world, and I was like, this is cool. I had two teammates, Sylvia Sweeney and Bev Smith, who were the first two to go and play pro in Europe. And after I got my undergrad in sciences at Bishop's, I was like, I would like to do this.
Yeah.
So I was the third female to ever go play pro
Wow.
in Europe. And I was like, what am I doing? You know, this was the time of like, you're not flying back home. You're not calling because you're calling on a payphone and it's costing you an arm and a leg. You're
Yeah.
writing letters
Right.
basically back home and leaving all my family, my friends. And it was, but I went to France, one of the top leagues, and obviously my first language is French. So the other piece that I did back then, which is different than nowadays, is that I decided I would ask to take on a job, a part-time job, so I could gain some work experience. And, because like life after basketball back then with a single mom, I was like, I got to be able to be prepared and get some experience working.
Right.
So I ended up teaching primary school phys ed with a mentor, which was great while I was in France. And then one of my best friends, that sport management programs were just starting up here in Canada. And one of my best friends got through the program at Concordia, and she got a job at the Canadian Olympic Committee. And so I was like, okay, I'd like to do this master's because I'm just passionate about sport. And so I did that. And at the end of it, I did my internship. And then the internship didn't turn into a job, but I got an opportunity to go back to Europe, this time teaching, playing in Switzerland. So it was kind of retirement detraining kind of phase for me.
Okay.
And I played and taught there in a private international school. But eventually, after 2 years, they asked me to be the head coach of one of the top teams in Switzerland. And so brought over some players, and then I became a player coach. Some of the more veteran players may have undergone that. And so that's a juggling act in itself. But it was great because I did my first professional certification in coaching at that time. And so spent 4 years there, which was a great experience for me. And then wanted to kind of come back to Canada, family being really important to me. So ended up thinking, okay, there's a new master's in sport management program at Ottawa U that had a lot more of the sport management courses, because the one at Concordia at the time was more of the MBA business courses, whatnot. So I did that, helped coach at the university with Wanda Pilon there, and then got a full-time head coaching job at Waterloo. So that was great because I got to coach and I got to be mentored by my senior national team head coach, Don McRae,
Okay.
on the basketball side. And on the sport management side, his wife, Judy McRae, was an amazing role model as a female senior and a sport management leader in Canadian universities. So I had the great opportunity there to grow, and I didn't only coach though. I did I managed the campus rec clubs there, and then as I went through that, I did all my NCCPs, level 1, 2, 3, and so that was a really cool experience. And then came life and family balance things kind of came into play, and I ended up getting a job, leaving coaching at the university level and getting a job in sport management, but in a totally different sport,
Okay.
in freestyle skiing. For 5 years, I worked in Ottawa, the mecca of all the sports, national sport and we had like this big building, and really got to hone in and learned a lot at a time where freestyle was just starting as an Olympic discipline. So just got kind of like really well grounded in sport management pieces, because I was a basketball player, a basketball coach, but then the sport management piece, I really gained a lot of experience, and then the job at Canada Basketball, my own sport came up, and the national team coach at freestyle skiing knew that would be like that was the one that was dear to my heart. And so yeah, we started with 4 people in our office. We had
That's
an
amazing.
executive director,
Right.
a comms and events person, myself, and a bookkeeper. And it was like we had men's and women's senior national team programs, but really nothing else. And I remember the coach at the time, Bev Smith, who I played with, her and I, had experience certainly playing in Europe and the national team of days past. And so it was like, okay, now what's the vision and how do I build an infrastructure knowing what's in Europe, knowing our own country and what's possible, and how do I kind of look at this jigsaw puzzle? And so there's a lot of benchmarking. And, one of the things that kind of stuck to me was like, okay, we didn't have funding, but every other nation that was successful, I did a piece on, certainly a review on Australia and France, and who were top of the world at the time, and were more comparable than maybe like a US that has such amazing talent. And I remember Bev telling me, she's like, Denise, it's going to take at least 10 years before we see the results of investment in next gen and developing a pathway and a system, you know? And so she was right. It took at least 10 years before we started to see the fruits of our labor type thing. And certainly, yeah, there's lots to be said about exactly what we did, but that's kind of my pathway, and all along the way, every single experience that I had and the people that I learned from helped to prepare me for what was ahead. Since I've started at Canada Basketball in this position, so there's been many ups and downs and ebbs and flows, but that's, you got to be prepared to pivot and adjust and really be very strategic with the limited resources that you have. That's probably the biggest takeaway for me over the years, is like, and colleagues that I know from other countries. I remember in France, they have a machine
Right.
at all levels that funds and supports and structures and pro clubs and pro coaches. And they said, Denise, it's just unbelievable what you're able to do with like what you've got. No
Right.
professional domestic leagues, no paid coaches other than university. So that's a bit of my kind of journey in the sport of basketball.
Well, no, and I love it, and that was why I was excited to have you on, because I feel like if anyone's going to have true and honest insight in terms of how the program has developed from your time starting in 1998 to now, and the success, growth, and climbing the rankings and in every way, right? And you look at next gen programs and our junior national team, especially for the women. That age group is tremendous right now. What like to see that growth, Denise, and what do you think has been maybe a couple like key components to really have Canada basketball where it's at now, to come from, you know, even if you went back, you mentioned the 10-year window that Bev was talking about, to start seeing some of the results, depth, if you will. Like, what's been key components to now really have this ladder of age levels and talent pool? Like, what's been a couple things that's been really vital, if you will?
Hmm. Yeah, so yeah, the thing that I would say were vital elements were first taking a look at investing in age group programming through the Centers for Performance. So at the time in amateur sport in Canada, there was the long-term athlete development model that Bev and Jay, when they were doing their level 4, helped to develop with Istvan Bali. From that's the base of what you're supposed to do at different stages, growth, development within the sport of basketball as well. So they were contributors to that. And we contracted Alison McNeil to draft a curriculum for Centers for Performance that Canada Basketball had a vision to implement in 6 regions across the country.
Right.
By having a common curriculum where people are learning the same things, then we would have a chance with these short windows of maybe 3 days and go to a age group competition to actually get people working. So the Centers for Performance, as I said, there was like the curriculum. There were 7 coaches across the country, or 6 coaches in each of the Centers for Performance that were brought together, gone through that curriculum. Then they went to their regions. They would identify, based on what we've asked them to, athletes that have potential to play at the senior national team level or age group levels. And so they would have 40 athletes, and they would train X number of weekends between September and March or April, and then they would run pods in between
Right.
those weekends. And so it might have been a maximum of, like, I don't know, 8 to 10 weekends. And so that started while we were at the Olympics. Allison got it piloted in British Columbia, and then out of the Ontario, I started it in our office, with an intern. Ultimately, we wanted the provincial associations to run the program. Ontario wasn't ready until a few years later, so I just basically ran it out of our offices. So I would say the Centers for Performance first was the big first change. Then the second one would have been, but because that's in 2000, and by 2003, we're now starting to have junior teams, right? Under 18, under
Right.
19. So Alicia Tatham, Krista Phillips, Kalisha Keene, they're part of that first 2003. By 2005, we've got like development teams that are also running, where we've got Tamara Tatham, Lizanne, and then we start with the cadet teams as well. And then in 2006, it was the NIDA program. So that was a National Elite Development Academy, which was able to operate for 3 years until funding cuts. We had 70% loss in our funding. But that NIDA program had players like Natalie's come through that, the Plouffe twins,
Right.
Kayla Alexander. And so, it was, they would stay in Hamilton and live there year round, go to school. We had like different schools set up, French, English, Catholic, and a billeting program. So families took players in, and then we had them competing exhibition against youth sport teams, junior high school boys teams, and then they would go to a tournaments in the States, and also a tournament in Europe that I organized. And so Christine Stapleton was our NIDA coach at the time. And so she led that piece. And then, in 2000, and I think it's in 2010 or 9, actually, the Own the Podium is now in place, and there's a pivot 180 degrees in the funding, and we lose, as I mentioned, 70% of our funding. And so we had to cut out, our executive director at the time had to cut out our NIDA program. But then what we did was we started this targeted athlete strategy. So we're identifying talent, and then our staff is still going out to some of the provinces, and we still continue to run age group summer teams. So there's cadets, which is under 17, 16, and then juniors under 18, 19. So, you've got by 2010, you've got some, seniors like, you've got Teresa, Kim Gaucher, Liz, Natalie, Alicia, Miranda, Yim is in that pool. And then in the juniors, you've got like the Ploufs. And then in the cadets, you've got, somebody like Naira who now enters into the pool. So
Right.
what was really important was for us to be able to kind of say, here are the athletes, because we're seeing what's at the top senior level. Here are the type of athletes and players that we need in our pool. And so we really started to kind of change the makeup of the athlete pool by having programs, and then for the coaches who I'm eternally grateful to in our Centers for Performance, and who were working with these young players to understand here are the things they need to work on. And so yeah, we just continued with that targeted athlete approach, and then integrated camps in December, March, and then the summer. And for girls, they don't have the same level of opportunities that maybe some of the boys will have, because they might be the best in their area and they're not competing on a daily basis or training on a daily basis with the top type of talent that we'll see at the top international level. So it was really important for us to provide some guidance to those coaches, and to continue to have some regular touch points where they could come best on best, see what they need to work on, and then go back home. And then when they get to a competition internationally, especially when you get to the world level in particular, because FIBA America has the Americans, sometimes Brazil and Argentina are strong, but when you go to the world level, it's another world.
Right.
Yeah. So I would say those three things, the Centers for Performance, the NITA program, the targeted athlete program, and then the more consistent programming cross would be the key things that have helped.
Do you get involved like at your level? I know, I would imagine now, and correct me if I'm wrong, like the funding, corporate stuff, sponsorship stuff, as we enter 2024 is probably a different level um, compared to obviously 98 or 2008. Um, are you leaned on at all, like to kind of assist with that in terms of recognizing what's needed for most importantly, like the women's side? And we just talked about entering and establishing all the age group teams, and building this next gen and this pool and a targeted athlete. Like, are you giving input? Are you leaned on in terms of what's required from a funding side, having seen going from very little funding and 4 employees to now being a really strong program in the world and high level athletes? Like, are you providing input on all that?
Yeah, it's this whole area has evolved over time.
Right.
And so since we started, for us, we relied very heavily at the beginning with government funding.
Right.
Sport Canada gave core funding. My job wasn't in fundraising, or that was more the executive director and the board that did that. For me, the involvement with funding applications was with Sport Canada. And so that piece was part of it. And then once On the Podium came into effect, then that became a big one. So yeah, that part, let's at the beginning we didn't get any funding, but you had to really do a solid job. I remember we spent 4 months with Wayne Parrish the very first time our men's and women's were faced with, okay, this is the application process, and you had to put in place some compelling arguments and some statistics on why we should be chosen to be funded. And at the time, there was just one big envelope of funding for On the Podium, and it's a top-down approach, and you get funded based on the statistical proofs that you can medal. And so I remember Wayne, with one of our board members, was able to kind of get a coalition of summer team sports together to actually approach the federal government and the Harper government at the time uh, uh, indicated that they wanted Own the Podium to set aside a small piece of the pie for summer team sports. There had
Right.
never been a summer team sport since the men's 1936 Olympic that had won a medal. And so it was all the research on, the cultural significance of team sports that kind of probably made that decision to be made. So once that was in place, then it was another whole level than the Sport Canada funding applications. Then we had certainly more people in the organization that were doing marketing and
Right.
fundraising. But our jobs as high performance directors, which was our titles at the time, was to really, and it still is, to kind of apply for the funding through Own the Podium. And then, what was really neat as well. So that's been since 2008.
Right.
That's been a constant source of funding for our women's program. But what was a blessing for us, and I know I've used this word before, but eternally grateful to the city of Edmonton. The
Right.
city of Edmonton, since 2013 until Tokyo, were tremendous financial supporters of our senior women's team. It was our training center. Anytime we had training or exhibition, we would go there. If it wasn't for their support, I wouldn't have been able to put in place what I did in order for the team to get more opportunities for quality training, more players, more exhibition, and then Own the Podium's funding, as we were able to, through analytics, demonstrate our, because you had to get into the analytics piece. So I ended up hiring staff that were specialists in these particular areas. I hired a performance manager who was like a technical director in Mike McKay, and then Steve Bauer, who was an assistant with our senior team, was also an analytics lead for us. So without that additional support, we don't necessarily move up in the rankings, and we don't necessarily move up in the funding that we've received from Own the Podium. So certainly blessed to have staff and a team that works with us to help in these spaces, and to have performance partners like Own the Podium with advisors that have been really, really supportive of our women's program. And it's a tough, in summer team sports, like in our particular sport, the depth of competitiveness is huge. And
Right.
so I've worked very collaboratively with them, and they've been great performance partners, and provided me with guidance as I look to tweak and be strategic in the next steps that would kind of push the needle further.
Yeah, no, that's interesting. And I think about, having followed the program, like we kind of talked about before we recorded, is like, just seeing the growth in funding from the outside, obviously, like from my perspective, but uh, and establishing, like I remember when the relationship with the city of Edmonton got established for the senior women's national team. I was like, this is really cool because, just sometimes things are so centered through Toronto and the GTA. And I was like, this is uh, a really cool aspect. I thought it was relevant. And, just at the time, Michelle and Catherine were key players for the senior women's team. So that went hand in hand. And, just to see, where the program is at as a whole now with the funding and the interest in the corporate side. And those are discussions that I've had with Mike too, obviously. And, I think hopefully you get recognized from your peers and everybody as a key driver in that. I just think it's crucial. And, as we head to Paris, and which is going to be an incredible summer for the program in so many ways, it seems like it's going to get elevated again, and that corporate interest is going to be there to just deliver more programs and develop athletes. I wanted to ask about Obviously.
Before you
Sorry,
ask me the
go
question,
ahead.
what I'd like to add is that, like, since Mike Bartlett and Abby have been on board and leading the business side of our organization has just propelled our funding levels to like another
Right,
level.
right.
It's just that focus on not relying so heavily on government funding has been tremendous for all our programs and all the activities, to your point. So wanted to
Yeah,
shout out to them because Andrea, Abby, and Andrea's our finance person. They just, Abby and Mike and our board is just, they've been tremendous.
yeah. Well said. And I know Mike is passionate and he's excited about it, and we appreciate his support here. Just with the women's, not the senior women's team, Denise, and obviously getting ready to play in Hungary here, and over the last few competitions and camps and gatherings in between, there's been an obvious effort to, it seems like, to include some of the junior level players that are going to be staples of the program for the next 20 years. Like I look at that U19 team that won bronzes last summer with the likes of Sila and Toby and who else, Cass and Delaney and so many others. Um, how do you balance that? Like I know that, and when you go to a tournament, like Sila was on the senior women's team at the FIBA AmeriCup and owned her spot. Like she's got to earn that. She's got to play well. And it's not something that's just handed out. But at the same time, how do you kind of balance that to include them in situations and keeping in mind like they're young players? Like what goes into that thinking, if you will?
Yeah, I think to your point, for us, it's been, it's part of our history that more recent history, I guess, since, players like Kim, Gaucher, Natalie at 16, 17-year-olds making the senior national team. Kia is one of them. And now we've got certainly Cass and Sila, who are part of that younger generation and balancing it. Well, it's you've got to make sure that they're ready,
Right,
physically ready, and on the mental, social, emotional side as well. So you put the time in. Our staff provides guidance to the athletes and their coaches and their families. And then you make sure they're paired up with a teammate that might be a young one. And yeah, our staff is really good that way. They kind of make sure that they check in with them and before, after, during, and yeah, if you put the time in and you're ready for the opportunity, it's it gives you a visual of what you, as I said earlier, what you need to work on. So
right,
somebody like the example of Sila in her first camp, connecting. I mean, she's got her dad who was a former athlete in the 2000 Olympic and Sean, and so
of
like,
course.
okay, here are some things. So Mike McKay would follow up as our performance manager who oversees kind of like that next gen to just say, here are some things. Our IST lead, sports scientist, Lauren Bushman, is also full-time with us through the Canadian Sport Institute. And so she provides programs and direction. And Sila zoned in on those things, and it's unbelievable to see in whatever 6 months between the time where she first was exposed to a training camp and to the next time, like just night and day. So balance is trying to make sure you're checking in with them and connecting them with the young, the veterans. And the veterans are amazing. They're
Right.
absolutely amazing with the younger generations. Whether it was, the vets that were in that 47-day training camp under Allison at University of the Fraser Valley, just kind of checking in and kind of almost being a mother figure to Natalie at Chanwa, or There's always been generation Kim Gaucher Smith, who's checking in and giving Naira some tips when she's first coming on board. They just do such an amazing job. They're amazing people who do a really great job of mentoring and also mentoring the younger ones, but also honoring those who came before them.
Yeah, I love it. Well said. And I know, um, I guess from your perspective, like given the talent that um, that U19 age group has right now, and some of them have obviously already competed with the senior women's team. You got to be pretty excited, don't you? Like if you look at that age group and some of these players that are going to be key figures for the program, and when I say that, they also seem to really uh, like I've had Sila join me, and I think Jasmine Bosco is going to come on here soon. Um, and others that I've mentioned, they seem to really value and appreciate and understand um, the honor and privilege of playing for Canada already at a young age. So I just feel like they seem really committed to that and loyal to the program in so many ways. So I guess in your role, like you got to be pretty excited about what's to come for the program in the future with this group of players that's coming up.
Yeah, no, absolutely. Really excited. It's tremendous for them as individuals and for our program, our women's program moving forward to see
Right.
the level of the athletes coming in. Um, I would also say that it's playing for a national team is it's a different context. And I think for those young ones that really buy in and who it's a priority for to want to represent their country, it's a priority, it's an honor, it's a family really. I always would start our age group camps, and I would welcome everybody by just saying, even if it was a tryout or an age group assessment camp, I'd say welcome to the you know Canada basketball and the women's national team family. You're
Cool.
now officially a part of that. And I think the tradition has lived on with uh, all of those who are involved and who, as I said, make it a priority. It's a priority to them, and an honor for them, that they just help each other through it, right?
Yeah. So with the family piece, like when I've had guests play on the senior women's national team, like we've talked about Kim. Kim is probably one of the true icons in the program. Uh, you know, I've asked them about that commitment and that sacrifice for the senior women's national team. When they get to that point in their career, in their lives where they have family, they probably have children, um, and they just speak on what that discussion is like amongst them as players. Like, what do you see from them when they do that and they talk about it? Like, obviously, the program and yourself are forever grateful for that. Do you do you have to say much about that to the athletes and the players? Do they just kind of own that themselves and push each other that way? Like, what's maybe the discussion and um, points of view from the program when it comes to that for that commitment and sacrifice?
hmm I think the athletes, it's kind of evolved over time where the veteran athletes who have taken on uh, a large part of that role. Um, I believe that from, when you've lived the experience and you speak from experience of being there and committing the number of years that you do as an athlete, I think that's the biggest, it can be the biggest influencer.
Right.
Uh, and so I love the fact that the athletes um, have a strong voice in this space, that they speak athlete to athlete. There's a lot of noise out there,
Right.
and there's a lot of influencers. And when you hear it directly from an athlete who has walked the talk, that is strong. There's just way too much that's pulling people in all kinds of different directions. So
Right.
I love it when the athletes do help each other in that space.
Yeah, well said. And I know it does mean a lot for them, and they've stressed that a lot in conversations I've had with them. And the support goes both ways, right? They do a lot for the program, but the program does a lot for them as well. So I think the women, especially, it's been documented for a while now, like the commitment and sacrifice, and hopefully they see that the appreciation's there, and the support. Denise, I wanted to ask about, uh, on the men's side with Rowan and his role. Do you and Rowan collaborate quite a bit? And I'm just wondering, like, for both sides of the program, is there a lot of things that are sort of transferable to have, you lead the women's program, him lead the men's program, and share success? Like, do you guys get a chance to collaborate often on ideas and situations?
Yeah, we when Roland first started, um, I mean, he was new to the whole space, and so there was a lot more conversations and communications. And the men's and women's program, there are certain things that are very different.
Right.
But then there are some where there's some commonalities. And so we do speak about those. It's another world, it's another competition format, it's another context. Like on the women's side, like I have to, I say in French, sensibiliser, which is kind of make people aware of the true context for women in this sport.
Right.
And it's not, NBA salaries or like that's another world. And so, yes, we collaborate on particular things. I always find it interesting to know some of the differences because decisions are made based on the context and the situations that we currently have and what we need to move the needle, which is could be different.
Right.
But yeah, it's nice to have a colleague who, I mean, Rowan played when I was, the high performance person in on the men's side. So to see all those guys, it's kind of nice to be able to connect.
Yeah, that's cool. And I know he's probably seen a lot of growth and appreciated your support and being a sounding board too. And I just wondered how much, how many situations are similar, like you said, or different. And I think the support of one side of the program can typically pull the other along too at times. And uh, if you ask me, like, I think the women's program in a lot of ways has been hopefully a bit of a blueprint and and guideline for the men's side to see the commitment and sacrifice. And yeah, it's some different worlds in terms of their pro careers or whatever, but hopefully the women has been a nice example for the men to see what it takes to stay committed to the program. I know Mike had mentioned you were instrumental, in finding Victor LaPena as, sort of the next head coach for the senior women's national team. How did you go about sourcing Victor and just identifying him and maybe thinking why he was the ideal hire, and just give us your thoughts on his work thus far as the head coach for the senior women's national team.
Hmm. I think for the organization, it was, and from obviously guidance also from Own the Podium in terms of some of the best practices. The board and Glenn Grunwald at the time was our CEO president, and so it was a worldwide search. And so worldwide meant let's identify some candidates, look at the items that we're looking for in a head coach, and looking at the type of profile, having spoken to the athletes, the pros, the experienced athletes, what they felt would help us take that next step. And so things such as having coached professional athletes, experience such as having experienced Olympic Games and medaled at Olympic Games. Like we had a list of items that we went through. And so then it was like, okay, let's take a look across the world. So it was USA, Europe, uh, even Asia, and different people within our search committee had different roles of connecting based on their connections
Right.
of reaching out to some and then opening some it was through open applications. And so with someone like Victor, as the information came in and you do a global search, and this is where I kind of collaborated with Rowan, right? Because they went through the same thing. They
Right.
called it the gold medal profile for a coach and what the differences were and what they needed. Somebody with extensive FIBA experience was, critical. And so Victor was one of the individuals that was within this, that met some of those criteria. And so what was interesting was that I had we had obviously seen him as an assistant coach with the Spanish national team over the years.
Mhm.
And then what was interesting is like he was no longer coaching with them as an assistant. He was now in coaching in another country. So he had coached in Russia, and then at the time when we hired him, he was in Turkey. So top teams, Fenerbahce in Turkey
Yeah.
and in
Right.
Russia. But and so Fenerbahce on the men's side, are two separate clubs, also has Maurizio Girardini. So I
Okay.
was able
Yeah.
to kind of connect, and Maurizio was great. He just texted me actually yesterday, and anything I can do to help, let me know. But
Awesome.
so he was a great connector. But I had seen Victor when I was out traveling in Europe, watching some of our players. I actually saw him as he was coaching somebody that was Canadian on the other team, and had asked him some questions about this particular player who wasn't yet in our pool.
Okay.
And so that first connection, but then years later, 2 years later, we're looking for a coach, and so it was he was the best match based on what we wanted, and the subsequent criteria was, can we get somebody here for full time to be able to impact also the direction of some of the curriculum and the technical direction, and help some of our coaches. And Mike McKay, who, as I mentioned earlier, is our performance manager, he does next gen, but he's a teacher of coaches, a mentor
Okay.
for coaches. And so Victor's just been tremendous to help in that space in the 2 years that he's been here. So that's how that kind of came about, is that he was the right fit. Um, and he just is, like Jordy, super passionate about coaching Canada, and also like wanting to meet our former national team coaches, getting to know them. So I connected him to Kathy Shields, to Alison McNeil. He saw Lisa Tomitis recently, so he's Canadian at heart now.
Yeah. It seems like he's embraced that, and then him and his family are here full time. And I know players that I've talked to and that have played for him now, or and on the senior women's team, and in this short amount of time he's been the head coach. Really enjoy like him in that role. The defensive mindset, I thought, was really evident, like at the World Cup in Australia there, and that result I thought was due a lot to the defensive side and that energy and attention. So from outsider looking in again, I think he's a great hire in that respect, and uh, I think he's gonna do a great job for the senior women's national team. Are you good for time still, Denise? I'm
Yeah,
worried about your flight. Okay,
yeah.
okay, you got a couple more things here. Denise, I'll usually ask a player when they join us, what playing for Canada means to them, and wearing that red and white. So I suppose I should ask you, just being able to have this role and this perspective with Canada basketball now for so long, and represent the program and the country in the way you do, and being a former player, like what has that meant to you thus far, and as you continue to do this role and push the program, like just talk about the personal side with that, what that's meant for you.
Yeah, representing your country is it's an absolute honor. To be able to contribute to in my current role, as a player, obviously was amazing, and then in my current role, it's equally important to me, and I know the responsibility that I
Right.
have in providing um, what's needed for our athletes and our programs to be successful. It's that, I guess, that persistence and determination to make it better, to make it better, and so that our athletes and our staff have a chance to, shine at the highest level. So it's a total passion. Working in amateur sport, it's not like in the business world. It's quite different. It's you do it for the passion of it in this country. I would say so.
Yeah, absolutely. I love that. And people tend to get sidetracked by who's kind of maybe wearing a jersey at the time when, and playing and whatnot. But there's so many people behind the scenes that help drive that and push that, and that need to be appreciated. So I know the program has so many more staff now that contribute. So I'm glad to see that it still means a lot for you, and the program is obviously near and dear to your heart to go from a time of four employees to what it is now. It's truly special, and I just think hopefully when people listen to this, they get a deeper appreciation of what it takes to deliver the program, and run age group teams, and put the senior women's national team at the Olympics, and finally we have the men there. They finally owned up on their end, and it's going to be a great summer. And Denise, do you have a top five or favorite five of all time for Canada basketball?
Oh, that's a tough question because there's so many
I
generations of
I know.
players, current, past, and top five.
If anyone has good perspective, it's you.
Depending on criteria that you use, because for me, like I there's the performance side of things, but
Right.
there's also the longevity of the contributions of some people. So I'm going to
For
go
sure.
with more than five. For performance, obviously, like historically, you've got like the Sylvia Sweeney MVP at World Cup in 1979. Bev
Right.
Smith at 19 was on the All Star team. You take a look at, from somebody like a Tammy Sutton Brown, who represented Canada a few years, but was also as a Canadian player, spent 12 years in the WNBA, was one of the first of the first group. And then you've got, people with longevity like Teresa Gabriel, Diane Norman, Kim Gaucher, you know, and then you've got our more current ones like Naira, Bridget, Kayla, Kia, Shay. So I've got more than five. I just have
I
so
love it.
much gratitude for the current and the past.
No, that's great. And those are, like, when you were talking about meeting Sylvia, and then and Bev, and competing with them, like, um, I've obviously never met them, but I know the names and the stories, and just true iconic people in the program, and trend setters and trailblazers, and then, yeah, like so many great names you mentioned, and just they've contributed so much. Like you said, it's just mind blowing to just see, you know, I think it speaks to people recognizing those people that came before them, like you mentioned, right? And uh, I was excited to ask you that question because, if anyone's got the perspective to give us some great names, it's Denise for sure.
Yeah, and I'd say, just chatting with Sylvia as well. She used to sometimes be involved in Deb Huban. Deb Huban was one of those players as well. They all where they can and there's a few others, anyways. And they were just saying that there are some that even came before them that were relative to when they're talking about Hall of Fame that are really high up there that I didn't really know historically.
Right,
But there's also people that I think we need to recognize. There's the athletes, but there's also the coaches, right?
right,
So from the Don McRae's to the Bev, Allison, Lisa, who have just like committed
right.
so much to the program. Like we wouldn't be where we are at the moment if we didn't have leadership of such tremendous, tremendous people.
Yeah, well said. Denise, anyone you'd like to see join us on Canada Hoops, like from your perspective, who has a good Canada basketball story that they should share with everyone?
Oh wow, there's lots. Lisa, Allison,
Right,
Bev, Don McRae, even he could talk to you about the history and back then, and Teresa Gabriel, some of the older ones,
right.
Diane. You had Kim already, which is great. You had the Michelle Plouffe as well. So
Yeah.
yeah, I'd say Tammy, get Tammy on.
I've messaged Tammy. I'd love to have Tammy. Maybe you can help me connect with her. But she's well for a player side. I guess she would be kind of near the top of the list for me. And
Yeah.
um,
Oh, you know who else you should have on is Kathy Shields. Sorry, I forgot her in the coaches group.
right,
She coached our national team, but she played with our national team. She, Allison, like they follow our team all the time. We've been to Victoria,
right.
and Kathy was out last year when we hosted Japan. But she follows the team
All right.
all the time. Yeah.
I'll start hunting people down here. We'll get this done.
Uh
I love
huh.
it.
Uh huh. Yeah.
Um, any shout outs or thank yous before I get you out of here so you can get on your flight? And again, Denise, truly appreciate this and uh, I feel privileged to have this conversation with you and you joining us. But yeah, anyone you want to, I'll give you the mic and if you want to thank
Okay.
anybody.
Shout out to my family, who my family on both sides, to my wife, to all my in-laws, to my nephews, my nieces, friends. Everybody's behind this team and this journey, so thank them. Also want to thank all my colleagues, and all former colleagues, executive directors that we've had who have, like just been in the trenches in an
Right.
environment that has been so challenging, you know. And so wanted to shout out to them all for their tremendous contributions because they're part of this journey. And very importantly, to our staff of all national teams and to our high performance staff on men's, women's, and everybody behind the scenes at Canada Basketball that contribute now because there's so many more contributions. It's a lot bigger than back in the day when there was four of us. To the players, to those players and families who choose to go on this adventure of striving to be a national team athlete, to dream about, representing Canada and getting Canada on the podium is I'm eternally grateful to them and yeah, to everybody also in the system that is doing the right thing for the young girls. The right thing.
Right.
The right thing. I will say it 3 times because it's so important that we do the right thing for them so that they don't get burnt out, so that they don't get injured, so that they don't get caught up, it's their experience and what they want out of their experience, and giving them a voice to be and to be able to determine their journey, because it is their journey.
Yeah, awesome. So many people that have obviously impacted you and supported you. So we appreciate that. And listen, Denise, we want to wish you all the best and continued success with Canada basketball. And obviously, we can't wait to see how the summer unfolds for the senior women's national team and the rest of the program, and you and your staff. And yeah, I truly appreciate this.
Thank you for all that you do. It's a tremendous show, and thank you for shining the light on the sport and the people in the sport that make it such a special sport. So thanks so much.
Well, thank you, Denise. And that's a wrap on another episode of Canada Hoops. I want to thank Denise Dignard for pulling up. Thank you for listening. Remember to rate and review us wherever you get your podcasts. Keep supporting Canada basketball and our Canadian Hoopers, and we will see you on the next episode.